The show's a little bit topsy-turvy this morning because I'm delighted to welcome to the studio, first time I'm welcoming him as a Reform UK MP for Newark, Mr Robert Jenrick. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Happy Monday morning.
And to you too.
Just first of all, hard question. What's it like in Reform? Are you all happy there?
Well, it was a hell of a week, but I'm very pleased that I made this decision. Look, I'm excited to be part of what I believe is a team of people who can set out to change the country.
Yeah.
And that's what we need right now. The country is a mess. We need change.
I mean, you do. I think we safely say we do need change. I suppose I need to get, first of all, your response to what Keir Starmer has just been saying. Such as he said anything, what should the UK response be to Donald Trump threatening tariffs against his neighbours?
Well, I'm none the wiser what the Prime Minister's strategy is, having to listen to a bit of his press conference today. What Trump has done is obviously wrong. It cannot be that the US can use bully boy tactics to take control of Greenland. He has a point that there is an incredibly important strategic question about Greenland, the Arctic, what's called the High North, and we can't allow our adversaries like China and Russia to get a foothold there now and in the decades ahead. But it's got to be resolved diplomatically, hasn't it? And so you've got to work with allies, whether that's putting more defence equipment, armed forces personnel there from the US, whether it's through NATO. There needs to be found a solution, but hopefully this can be done in a diplomatic way.
Should he be threatening, along with the Europeans, Macron, by all accounts, threatening this tariff response?
Look, I don't think getting into a trade war helps anyone. Well, it definitely doesn't. Trump was wrong.
Well, that's what Keir Starmer said. You agree with Keir Starmer?
Trump was wrong to do that. I don't think it's helpful for us to respond in a sort of tit-for-tat way. You've now got to get around the table and try and dial this down and come up with a sensible diplomatic solution. But part of that is appreciating what the US is saying here, which is that this part of the world is strategically very important. There is a serious threat, not just to the US, but to our own interests if you find China and Russia getting a foothold there. And so we've got to find a solution to that, but it's obviously a diplomatic one, not one which involves the US taking over this against the will of the people.
Is this a clear message to the Europeans, including Britain, not the EU, the Europeans, that they really should have been spending a heck of a lot more on defence? Because actually, them suggesting, oh, we'll defend Greenland, or indeed we can take on Donald Trump.
That's a joke, isn't it? Because
you and whose army?
Exactly. Look, Europe, including the UK, is militarily weak. We have allowed our armed forces to be enfeebled. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the people. All European countries, for most of our adult lifetimes, have underfunded their armed forces under this naive belief that there was some kind of peace dividend. The US, perfectly understandably, say, well, why should we be the guarantors of your security? Why should American taxpayers be paying for what German and UK and French taxpayers could be doing? So we've got to get defence spending up, got to invest in our armed forces.
There's a lot of talk, 2.3, do we get it up to 2.5, do we get 3% of the GDP at some point in, the 2030s?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are different things you can say, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, 3%. It's got to be somewhere in that realm. But the most important thing is for us to actually have a domestic defence industry so that we are, creating jobs here in the UK, spending this money wisely, which, in honesty, the Ministry of Defence has not done in recent years, and be very clear-eyed about what our interests actually are. Question.
Do you know much about this? Because one of the things that Kemi Badenoch said in, your little tit-for-tat exchange that you had last week was that you had no interest in foreign affairs, you had no knowledge about foreign affairs.
No, I am not going to start trading insults.
You already did on Thursday.
I didn't, actually. She's lashing out.
Not at her, but
she's lashing out. She's obviously a bit upset. She clearly doesn't like me very much. But
did she like you before Thursday?
From what she has said since Thursday, I think the answer is no. But I'm not gonna, to follow suit on that. The point that I was making on Thursday was that I believe that Britain is broken, that the people that I represent are finding life very tough at the moment. And it's only if you're willing to say that, to appreciate that the country's in a challenging time, that you have any ability to start coming up with how you're going to fix it. And what I would say about Kemi is Kemi responded on Thursday, as well as all of the, the silly personal insults. She responded by saying Britain is not broken. That is the fundamental disagreement between us, between Reform and the Conservative Party, frankly, the big dividing line in British politics. Do you think the country's in a mess? Not broken beyond repair. We can fix this, we can turn the country around, but do you think people's lives are tough? That the country is in a hole and we need to do something radical to fix it? Or do you think, you know what, everything's all right, we'll muddle through, same old technocratic solutions, we'll manage decline? Well, I know which side of that divide I'm on.
And to be fair to you, you have been saying that for quite a long time, not just off the record, on the record. You've been saying that in interviews, and we understand you've been saying that at, the Tory away days and the like. You talked about representing your constituency in Newark. You represent them as a Tory MP until Thursday. They voted you in as a Tory MP. Why do you think it's acceptable for you to continue without having a by-election? I mean, it may well be, one of the reasons you defected was actually your constituents would prefer you to be a Reform MP. They did pretty well at the last election, in 2024. You were the only Tory in your entire region to be re-elected, when Reform did very well there. But, I mean... they elected a Tory MP. You're now a sitting Reform MP. We are years away from a general election. Why on earth would you think it's right to not hold a by-election?
Well, in our system, you do elect individuals. I appreciate that you're under a party banner and many, perhaps most people, are drawn towards the party rather than the individual. I do believe that in Newark, a part of the reason why I was elected at the last election against all of the polls, as you say, the only Conservative elected in the whole of that part of the country, was because I'd taken some independent-minded stances. I resigned from the last Conservative government because I disagreed with Rishi Sunak's immigration policies. People on the doorstep were saying to me, well, I'm voting for you rather than the party colour, or, I'm not going to vote Reform because I think you share the same values and principles of Reform. So I think they know what they get with me. I'm going to continue to represent them, obviously with vim and vigour, in the months and years ahead, fighting on local issues, holding Labour to account, and hopefully continue to represent them for a very long time to come. OK,
let's talk about all these defections. We've got Andrew Rossendale yesterday.
Great news.
MP. He's a shadow minister. I mean, pretty much all Tory MPs are shadow ministers because there aren't that many of them. So to fill them, let's face it.
Well, not all.
Now, Reform have got 7 MPs now, 40% increase in just a week. Nadeem Zahawi came on Monday, you, and then Andrew Rossendale, 3 defections in a week. This 7th of May deadline, this is the date of the local elections, the elections in Scotland and in Wales, and at that press conference with you last Thursday, Nigel Farage was very clear. This is it. This is the deadline. You can't wait until the results, and if they're bad, come and jump ship. This is it. Was that a requirement? Was that part of the deal that, say, Zia Youssef, who has said he doesn't want more Tories joining, was that part of the deal that he agreed with Nigel Farage in return for welcoming you? And I believe he attended a dinner with you that Thursday night. So it's all lovely-dovey now, but the deal is this is where it ends.
Well, what Nigel said is that if you share the values of Reform, strong borders, strong defence, trying to get the economy going again by actually raising living standards, no more net zero nonsense, which is impoverishing people, deindustrialising the country, all the issues that we've been campaigning on. Basically, if you think the country's broken and you want to set out to fix it, join Reform. But if you're in another political party, you've got to do it soon. Be part of it now when it's really getting going. And so he set a deadline saying, come to us before the May local elections and you'll get a good hearing. If you want to come much later on, perhaps when it becomes, let's hope, increasingly clear that Reform is on course to be the next government, then you're not going to have the welcome that you would have right now. I think that's perfectly justifiable. Reform is going to welcome people with experience as long as they share the values of Reform, but it also wants to set out to attract, I think, which is actually more important, people who are not associated with Conservative or Labour, people from other walks of life.
Well, we're expecting a Labour defection
people,
this week.
Teachers, doctors, people who have been spurned by the 2 old political parties and who can do something positive to create something new and exciting.
OK, look, let's go back to a little recent history, and I want to talk about the future as well. We've got a good bit of time, so let's go over some of these things. So, and especially with the reaction we had from our audience on Thursday when the breaking news happened at 11 o'clock. I mean, to be fair, we found out about it, I think, only 6 minutes after you did, when you were told by the chief whip, not even by Kemi Badenoch herself, that you were out. Yeah, let's face it, you were bounced into that decision on Thursday. That press conference wasn't supposed to be with you.
Well, to explain to your viewers, I had resolved to do this really over the Christmas period.
And when were you planning to announce?
It would have been a few days later, so it really made no difference to me whether it was Thursday or this morning. The point was, over a long period of time, I'd come to this conclusion. It's not something you do lightly. I probably agonised over it for too long, because you think about your constituents, the very kind and decent members that you have in the constituency who've helped you, plus all my friends in Parliament, because there are good people in the Conservative Party, don't get me wrong. So it was a very difficult decision for me. I took time to think about it, really resolved over Christmas, and then some events that happened later, like going to this away day where we were told the Tory line is that Britain is not broken. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think the country is a mess.
Do you think you need to recognise that to actually understand how serious the issues are that need to be fixed?
You do. Look, the problem for the Tory party is it's encumbered by its record. It contributed to the mess that the country is in today, made some disastrous decisions, and the only way it can regain people's trust is by being painfully honest about the mistakes that it made, accepting those, internalising that, and then setting out to be very different. That is the argument that I made after the general election, when I stood for leader of the party, and publicly and privately.
And is it your view that even if they paid lip service to that, they won't actually do anything about it? Because look, as Nigel Farage said, never trust a Tory. They'll always let you down. They will always betray you. I don't know whether he includes you in that or not. But I think
Nigel would accept that there's a mix of people. The problem with the Tory party is that a third of the Tory party basically should be in the Lib Dems. Another big chunk don't really care one way or another, are not waking up every morning driven by a deep desire to change the country, not angry at the state of the country. There is a group of very good Conservative MPs and lots of members in the country who exactly share all of the things that Reform stand for, and I suspect many of those people would be happier in Reform, and Nigel may be willing to welcome them into Reform. But the party overall, particularly in Westminster, is unrepentant for the mistakes it's made, and it will never be able to move on. I think this is why it is going to die as a political organisation, because it can't accept that, and it's got the same people at the helm holding on to the sort of past glories as they see them. I mean, I'll give you an example. Over Christmas, and this was one of the things that weighed on my mind, I woke up one morning to see Starmer was celebrating this extremist Alfata coming into the country. Like most people, I was disgusted. And
just remind people who are not.
He was this Egyptian extremist who'd said anti-British, anti-white, anti-Semitic comments, said the police should be killed down and should be burnt down.
It wasn't nuanced, was it?
A thoroughly nasty piece of work, and he was being brought into the country.
No, the Foreign Office had campaigned for his release.
They campaigned.
Apparently as a top priority.
Exactly, they said it was the top priority of British foreign policy.
He'd obtained for some reason British nationality.
Forget like illegal immigration or national security. Well, that's my point, Julia. I then, like lots of other people, took to social media, took to the media saying, deport this man, cancel his citizenship, I never want to see him walking the streets of our country. Imagine my surprise when I then hear there are complaints about me from the top of the Tory party that I had been doing something that drew attention to the fact that it was the Tory government that gave him citizenship, and that our foreign secretaries and prime ministers had been using their precious time with the leader of Egypt to campaign for this, rather than all the other more important things they could have been doing for the British people. And that just small example shows that if that is your mindset, the Tory party hasn't changed. It can't change. And I don't see why the British public should say, you know what, we don't like Starmer, so we'll hand you the keys back of the car you've just crashed, which you're in denial that you did it, and hope that they're going to have a different outcome this time. My view is that is a fantasy.
Okay.
I was naive to believe that was going to happen. What we should do now is concentrate on rallying behind something new and fresh in Nigel and Reform Party.
Okay. And that's a good, fair explanation of what's happened. When did you have your Damascene conversion? Because you were a Remainer. You were a Sunak loyalist. You were seen as Mr.
I resigned from Rishi Sunak's government. So I don't think Rishi Sunak would describe me as
you were put
a loyalist,
into the Home
Julia.
Office originally.
He was wrong, wasn't he? He underestimated
But was
me.
it what you saw in the Home Office? Was it the incompetence?
I think it goes back. Look, it goes back further than that. At the end of the day, my politics is rooted in where I grew up, in the West Midlands, in a kind of normal family.
Can I just say this? I think a lot of people think, with all due respect, you're a little bit of a posh Tory boy. But you've criticised the Tories for being the posh boy. But you're not, are you?
No, I grew up. I'm not going to pretend I grew up in,
You're not a toolmaker's son.
Oliver Twist. But I grew up in a very normal family. My dad was a gas fitter who started a small business. My mum was a secretary. We grew up just outside Wolverhampton. It was a normal family. It wasn't a Tory family. My dad didn't vote Conservative till, in fact, I stood for Parliament, and he did it, I think, probably to support me. But my politics are rooted in places like that, the small town in North Nottinghamshire that I represent. You're right to say, though, that I was absolutely aghast by what I saw in the Home Office, and maybe that radicalised me. I'm willing to accept that, but a lot of people in the country have been on the same journey. They thought the country was all right. Maybe the old answers would be enough, and then over time have come to see mass migration, poor living standards, broken public services. The state doesn't seem to be able to do anything at the moment. They're taxed to the hilt. They believe the country is in a mess and that it's going to take a radical reforming government, not more of the same, to turn it around. That is the journey that I've been on, but it's a journey I share with my constituents and most people, I think, in the country.
OK. We're going to take a very quick break.